Dreams are made to be achieved. Intuition Production.
On this episode of Think Like a DJ, the Mixtape Podcast,
we join author, lyricist, publisher, and editor of the Black Pages, a national black business directory, Miss Sheila Payton, to refine and uplift the black agenda.
Miss Payton discusses her perspective on black excellence, having emerged from the civil rights movement as a 6-year-old girl during Brown versus the Board of Education.
As our first guest, Miss Payton underscores the power of black political participation, not just in election years, but every year. Black wealth and our allegiance to other like-minded black folks, young and old.
Especially during a time like today.
Failure is not an option.
If your life was a party, how many would RSVP?
If you only live once, will your one party become a party of one?
Join us live in the mix as we first pick our tempo and ultimately rock the party.
This episode is sponsored by Head Start MKE
and Intuition Productions. Ken earned a Master's of Science in Business Administration from Cardinal Stritch, and I'm a published author and a licensed wealth coach.
For private business, consulting, book coaching, or simply to share your story, write us today at TLADJ Podcast at gmail.com.
What were your younger years and what were some of those younger lessons like that contributed to your publication of the Black Pages and even some of the books that you've written?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your program. I'm excited about this. I'll give you the Cliff Note version of my life. I was born in Mississippi and my parents moved to Milwaukee a month before I was 3 years old. I went to public schools here, got my undergraduate degree at Syracuse University, and my master's at UWM, and then went to work as a newspaper reporter for the Miami Herald. After that, I worked at Miller Brewing Company, and the last 5 years, I was a PR manager for 2 of the brands, and they gave me a budget. So part of what I did when I was there was to make sure that people that looked like me had opportunities to do business with the company. And then I left and started my own marketing business, ran a small business development program that focused on helping people of color get into business. And that's pretty much it. I bought the Black Pages. I was a customer of the Black Pages. Catherine Bailey actually started the book, but she got an opportunity to buy a Harley Davidson dealership and she took it. So I bought it from her because in my marketing business, I figured that having a business directory was a natural fit in terms of what I was trying to do as a marketing person, and as an opportunity to help Black businesses.
And with your background being in, is it in you have a bachelor's of art in journalism from Syracuse and a master's in urban affairs?
Yeah, I actually have a double major. They required you to have a double major if you were a journalism major at Syracuse because they wanted you to have an area of expertise so that you could ask intelligent questions. And so I had a major in journalism and a major in sociology because I wanted to be what urban affairs reporter, and basically what that is talking about, the life in the city, the impact that budgets and legislation and all kinds of things have on people's lives, and kind of like the disparities between African Americans and other people of color and others. So the 70s, I was there in the 70s, and back then there was it was a period not quite as intense as this one, but it was a period when things were not necessarily going well. And so it's an opportunity for me to kind of shine the spotlight on some of the things that were going on, and also interview people and find out what their plans were to make it better.
It seems like sort of the Black Pages that we spoke of is in the same vein of sort of that allegiance that you have to others that you spoke of. Can you talk a bit more about how you connected with Catherine Bailey and sort of that discussion of the purchase of the Black Pages and then the process of sort of getting things going and that vision behind it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Black Pages actually started in Atlanta, Georgia. It was an idea that was developed in Atlanta, Georgia. And over the years, it had as many, there were Black page directories in as many as 55 cities across the country. And the purpose of the directory obviously was to let people know that the businesses were out there, but we live in a capitalist society. And so money has an impact on a whole bunch of things. And one of the things that's important is to make sure that we are part of that capitalist society, not in the sense of being greedy, but just in terms of providing jobs and opportunities, as well as goods and services. And so that was the main reason for starting it. But then also the idea that if people supported the businesses and those businesses grew, then there would be opportunities for the business owners and to become some of the decision maker player type people in the community, which again would benefit our community. And then also it was an opportunity to say to government and other and private sector businesses that are at the time there was something called affirmative action was more related to people getting into schools, but there were laws that were passed that encouraged companies to use businesses owned by people of color, and so it was always easy for a major business to say, well, we couldn't find anybody. And so this was one of those, oh yes you can, there's a directory.
Right.
That's
Right. No, when I saw this, I'm like, I reached out to you initially in regards to the Black Pages and just finding it, and I was immediately inspired by it. It was just like, wait, the access to resources, to quality resources is something that I pride myself on, and I see it's been a hindrance for Black people in the Black community for far too long. And so it was just seeing the Black Pages. It was like, this is something tangible. This is a certain energy that comes behind just promoting it. And the Black Pages for our listeners, it's more than just a business and internet directory. It has knowledge. It has power within the pages. It has information in regards to African American or HBCU scholarships. It has zip codes. It has the representatives within the neighborhoods that we're predominantly in. It's so much more than just a business directory. And so you've given us something tangible, something practical within our hands that we can utilize. What's something that you would say that as Black people we can immediately do to improve the conditions of our community?
To be real honest with you, I think it's going back to what we did before we had laws that said, we're supposed to be treated like everyone else. And that is not to say that is happening. I have not lost my mind, but back in the day, when even looking at somebody the wrong way could get you killed.
Right.
We were saying inside our heads and out back up in the woods, and when we were by ourselves, this ain't working and we're gonna fix it. Mm-hmm. And we're gonna fix it part is real key, because we cannot afford to wait for somebody to come and rescue us.
Say that twice for the people. You got to say that louder for the people in the back.
We cannot waste our time waiting for people to come and rescue us. If you look at one of the good things about the 60s was that there were a lot of laws that were passed that were geared toward putting us on equal footing with other people who are citizens of this country. But there's always an undercurrent that is trying to prevent that from happening. And so even though there are good people out there, allies, who will put their lives on the line or go the extra mile to help, we cannot rely on people outside of ourselves to make things happen. If you're if you see a bus coming towards you, you do not wait for the bus for somebody to come and grab you and pull you to the sidewalk.
Right, or the bus to stop itself.
Exactly. And so that's I think really key. I think the other thing is that we need to spend more time supporting each other. There was a book that was written a number of years ago. It was called Our Black Year, and it was about this family, this African-American family, upper middle class family, who decided that they were going to do everything they can to spend all of their money with Black-owned businesses. And it was more challenging than they thought, but they were very successful at doing that. I don't know if they were 100%, but they were close. And it's things like that that make a difference, because like I said, it's not just about I'm going to support Black business because I'm Black. It's if those businesses are getting money and then they can hire people from the community. And if you look at it in the Hispanic community, in the Hmong community, in a lot of other communities, they have a fairly thriving business component as part of that community. And people go in and out of their stores on a regular basis, and they hire a lot of the people that look like them. We need to do more of that. We also need to be more concerned about government and our citizenship more than every 4-year time frame. Every single year, from City Hall and the school board all the way up to the federal government, people are making decisions about two things that impact everybody's life: budgets, where's the money going to be spent, and legislation, what are the rules that people have to play by.
But what our people, a lot of our young people say these days, it won't make a difference anyhow. It won't matter. What do you say to that, to those young folks who say, hey, there's, I have no skin in the game because it's already fixed, and we need to do away with this entire system and, create a new system? What is your feedback to that? We have ideas, but we're curious to know how do you respond as someone that's seasoned, that's seen this, there's nothing new under the sun. You've seen this thing before. How do you respond to young people who are in their younger selves, teens and 20s, that are saying, hey, why don't we just do away with this and overhaul this and be done with either side of the aisle?
Okay, and what I will say is that I am part of the Brown versus Board of Education generation. And that's the generation that was 6 years old when the U.S. Supreme Court said, hey, you can't have segregated schools. And so all of my life, and not just my life, but our generation's life, we were on the front lines of change. And there were a whole bunch of things that people said would never change. But we pushed on, and we did that. We had 3 goals. One was to take advantage of the opportunity. The second was to push the envelope, meaning if I can use a military reference, if you come in as a private, try to become a sergeant, because then sergeant becomes the floor for the people coming up behind you in terms of what they can achieve.
Okay.
If you can't become a sergeant, at least leave as a private first class, because then at least that's a step up from where you entered. And the other thing was failure is not an option, meaning that if we had messed up, the opportunities would have taken longer to happen. And also the people coming up would have had to fight the same battle that we were fighting. And that was not only through our experience, through our education, but also through our employment. A lot of people in that generation were pioneers in terms of the kinds of fields that they went into. Like I said, I worked for a newspaper. I went from grad school to working for one of the top newspapers in the country, which was totally and completely unheard of at that time. And I was seeing what news media were able to do in terms of creating change by reporting on what was going on in the 50s and the 60s as people fought for their citizenship rights. And so I said, well, I can combine the two. I want to be helpful, but then I want to use my skills. And everybody except my parents told me, well, they're not going to hire you. And the truth was, I couldn't name 5 people who looked like me that were working for major media. But I said, but my parents' only statement was, well, make sure you can make a living because we won't be around all our lives. And then they were very organized people. And so they had me do homework and decide where I wanted to go to school and why I wanted to go there. And I decided I wanted to go to Syracuse because it had a school of journalism, not just a department. And my thinking was, okay, if they have a whole school, then they probably could teach me more than somebody that just has a department. and then
that's very bright thinking as a young girl to think, a young woman to be, visioning that as a young girl, then grow into a teenager to be a young woman and say, stick with your guns and say, I'm going to do this.
Exactly. And what happened was that in the 4 years that it took me to get out of Syracuse, and then I had an internship in Rochester, New York. So Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester are kind of like Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha. I mean, they're close together. Mm-hmm. And the guy that was working there, I guess I did a good job as an intern, a reporter intern, because he offered me a job. And he said, well, I'm moving down to this newspaper in Miami, and I'd like to hire you. And I said, in my wisdom at 21, well, I'm going to grad school, and, I've already been accepted. I'd like to finish that. And he said, well, when will you graduate? And I said, well, I'll be out in August of next year. And he said, give me your phone number. And I gave him my phone number. And he called me in July and said, I'd like to offer you a job. And it wasn't until I got down there that I realized that I had gone from college to working for one of the top 10 papers in the country. And the reason for that is because in the 60s, the late 60s, 68, 69, in that era, the newspaper news media began to realize that they were missing stories and missing things that, they thought they were covering the entire community and doing a good job. And they realized that they needed people who knew something beyond what they knew in order to really be good at covering the communities that they were in. And so a whole bunch of us showed up at places where we had never shown up before. And that kind of confirmed something that my father told me all my life. He said, don't take a back seat to anybody. Not meaning that you run over people, but he basically was saying, don't be afraid to try.
Wow.
And so that pretty much was that's how I lived my life. Yeah. And I'll give you a real short story on getting to Miller. When I decided I wanted to do something else, I took my resume over. I was a reporter at the time. I took my resume over to Miami Beach where they had a job fair. And Miller had a representative there. And the guy that I talked to said, well, we need an executive speechwriter. Have you written any speeches? And I said, well, I have written mother-daughter speeches, mother-daughter lunch speeches and that kind of stuff. But I've spent the last 5 years as a newspaper reporter for the Miami Herald. And what that entailed is me listening to people talk. And so I have an understanding of how people normally talk as opposed to just putting words on paper. And so I'm sure that I would be able to figure out how to write effective speeches for your executives. And I was blowing smoke.
What they call fake it till you make it, huh?
They fake it till, but he took me up on it. And when I got there, I realized that I had told the truth, because when I listened to the people talk, one sounded like a used car salesman, one sounded like a Baptist preacher, another one sounded like a professor. And so rhythmically, I was writing in their cadence. And so they, that made their ability to deliver the speeches easier to do.
Can you talk about that? Can you talk about as a young woman, how you have a dream inside? You have something in your heart that's naturally kind of inspiring you, or that's intuitively moving you, and then you respond to it.
Something organic like that.
Can you talk about that being organic and growing from that epicenter of, I think I can do this, to I know I can do this, and then to nobody can tell me I can't do this?
Mm-hmm. I think part of it, again, goes back to my parents, because especially being a female, my father did not raise me to be a girl. I am a girl. I have always been a girl. He raised me to be a person who God gave gifts to. I was this may have had something to do with it. I was the only child for the first 7 years of their marriage. So maybe he said, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to invest in this one. So, but not really though, because and this is a true story, and then I'll wander back to me. He told me a story once of how he decided to marry my mother. And his story really quickly was that he was kind of looking at two different people. And he kind of asked them, well, what do you want to do when they were in college together? What do you want to do when you get out of college? And this one woman said, oh, I want to get married and have kids and have a nice house and da, 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 da. And my mother said, well, I'm going to get my degree, and then I'm going to be a teacher, and then I'm going to do this and that. And he said, well, would you like to get married and have a family? And she said, yes. And he said this was out of his mouth, he chose my mother because he knew that this was somebody who would be a good partner, and together they could build a good life. That was my father. And so when he had a girl child, I guess he said, well, I guess I'm going to be surrounded by women, so I might as well make her rock and roll.
And that he did. For sure he did. For sure he did. He's got in you and in your family tree something that Ken and I, we can both attest to in our families. We have become the change that our families have that they have looked for. We don't necessarily believe in like a talented 10th ideology or a select few, but there are some folks who are just anointed and who are blessed and who get, a certain upbringing, or they get drawn into a certain dream circle per se, a certain group of people who surround them and help them go north instead of south. And it sounds like you have aligned yourself with others who are in that network of a dream circle to help you get to the highest level of success, because there's a mastermind opportunity when you align yourself with others. And when you align yourself with people who believe in a certain vision, you guys are not working in separatism. You're working as one. We are all, one part of the body of Christ. And if, you're the head, or if I'm the hand and Ken is the left leg, we, the hip bone connected to the leg bone, and the leg bone is the shoulder. That's what they taught me as a kid. Right. So it's about how do you pull people into your network who are going to be a part of your dream circle to help you go further north. I wanted to dive in a little bit of because I know that you are a fearless woman based on what we've heard today and what we've read about you. And rightfully so. I mean, your father raised you to be that way and to not be segmented into, just being a woman based on our patriarchal society and those expectations. He's giving you, like you mentioned, he's giving you the opportunity and the wherewithal and the tools and the framework to be a person first and not just a woman.
One of the most memorable parts of our conversation with Miss Sheila Payton was when she talked about her versatility and her hybridity as a reporter. She talked about her, ability to switch her, her mindset when she was in the field, because she didn't just want to be Sheila Payton, the woman. She had to be Sheila Payton, the reporter for the Miami Herald. She talked about getting outside of our comfort zone and what it takes for us to be successful as young black folks in this country. I love how she phrased it when she said you basically have to move the furniture quietly and leave the room and make sure they did not notice that you moved the furniture until you went back in the room. When she discussed how she overcame self-doubt in the midst of uncharted territories, I was inspired. Let's get back in the mix.
Can you speak to what was one of the biggest fears you overcame in your life? And how did overcoming that fear actually impact your bottom line in your business?
Well, by the time I got to my business, I was in good shape. But to be now, try not to laugh too hard. I was a very shy girl.
Really? Never.
Yeah, I know. People look at me like, as much as you run your mouth.
You gotta tell people I was just observing. I wasn't shy. I was observing.
Yes. I like that better. So, and then I did not realize this is proof there is a God. I did not realize until I got my job as a newspaper reporter that I would have to talk to strangers. It's like, what? And my parents informed me, he said, now, once you get your job, you're on your own. But of course, I mean, in case of emergency, you know, like if you get really sick or something like that, we got your back. But we expect you to be able to take care of yourself. So I'm sitting here thinking, if I can't talk to these people and write stories, I may starve to death.
Right. You got to get something out of them.
So I developed what I call my alter ego. And I wasn't Sheila Payton. I was Sheila Payton, reporter for the Miami Herald. And Sheila Payton, reporter for the Miami Herald, be running down the street behind people asking them questions. But Sheila Payton wouldn't do that. So that's kind of how. And once I got past that and realized, you know, that the Sheila Payton, reporter for the Miami Herald personality kind of took over. Realized that I didn't have to be shy. When I'm just getting into a situation or just meeting people, I tend to be quiet and just observant, and that's a function of probably, again, the time that I came up in, because you had to be able to read the room, read the people, figure out what was going on. And you couldn't just jump up and say, okay, I'm moving the furniture. You had to move the furniture quietly and leave the room, and they wouldn't notice it until after you tried to sit down. That was how you did things back then. But it really helped me, because I realized that, again, you can get your mind set to do whatever it is you need to do to get where you want to go. And so,
and I think that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but I think that's the beautiful thing, that you didn't look into anything else. That you tapped into those things that, you know, those initial lessons that you learned with your father, and you said you created a sort of a alter ego for yourself, but ultimately it was still you. So you tapped into who you were. I feel right now in society, just within our Black communities, it's a bit of self-doubt. You spoke on these uncharted territories. And with us being in a triple pandemic, we say a triple pandemic because of the brutality of women right now, the economic sort of downturn, and the COVID-19. So that gives us that triple pandemic. But I was talking to Martinez about just a sort of set of tools, or a sort of toolkit that you would say that you had back then that you could go into right now if you were and sort of go into those tools and sort of maybe get some self-motivation, or sort of get some sort of oomph that you would need during those times back in the 60s, that you would say directly that you could use right now.
And actually, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but as I was looking at your Think Like a DJ list, those tools are there. One of, the first one, and again, my parents tended to be organized, and they brought me up to be organized. But the first one about, having a plan, and then figuring out how to execute that plan. And that again, my generation had a lot of experience doing, because we couldn't just walk in and say, okay, I know that I have the skills to do this, 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 and this, and so therefore they should give me the job, because a lot of times that did not happen. And so I had to come up with plans B through Z, and to accomplish my goal. And in some instances, it involved going back to reading the room. I'd be sitting in a room. I'm the only female there, the only Black person in the room. And I say something, and everybody looks at me, and they keep talking. And then like 10 minutes later, a person that does not look like me says almost verbatim what I said. And everybody starts waving their hands in the air and clapping. And I realized that sometimes what you have to do is realize that the messenger is the one that counts. And so I would size up people who seem to be able to have other people's attention. And if there was something that I thought needed to be done, I would sit down and think about now from the perspective, what would be the hot button that would make this person think, oh, this might get me a promotion
Right.
if I do this.
So it's kind of surveying the field and picking a tempo from that. And then one thing, I'm an alpha brother, so one thing we say in alpha is we say taking honest inventory of your character within, and for every virtue you find missing, try and weave it in. So you sit back and you be honest with what you have and what you don't have. This is what it sounds like you were able to do, and then kind of incorporate the things that were not there in order to transcend into another dimension of impact.
Right, and recognizing that you may or may not get credit for whatever it is that happens, but if you make somebody else look good, they're going to protect you. And for me, it's my father was a Marine. He was part of that first group of African Americans to go into the Marine Corps during World War II. And so being a Marine, he was mission oriented. So if I'm trying to persuade someone that we need to have a more diverse vendor base, and this is why, because there was a time when that thought was in vogue, then the messenger may not be me. The messenger may be somebody else, but the person who delivers that gets the oohs and ahs, and as that person goes up the ladder, he's more likely to keep me with him, to whisper in his ear and tell him stuff that he doesn't know.
Right, that makes sense.
And so the mission was to get more vendors in, not to have everybody applaud when I walk in the room.
Wow, that's so selfless. That is extremely selfless. That is really putting you in a space of being a vessel.
Yeah, servitude. Yeah.
But I mean, my life has been fine. I was able to retire at 55, so I did something.
Oh, talk big then. You talking that cloth talk. That's that special cloth. You keying into a high frequency now.
That's for sure.
For sure. No, thank you. We're excited to chat with you. And you talked a little bit about you resonating with the first step of picking, a tempo, and that in the 7 steps in the Think Like a DJ book of spinning your poverty into prosperity. Pick a tempo was important to you. Can you elaborate on any other steps that may have resonated with you in the 7 steps to spin poverty into prosperity?
The 7th step was important. Also too. My English teacher just rolled over in her grave.
Also too, is that might be a double positive. As well. I'm riding with you though. We on your wavelength of success right now. We on your frequency of faith. So you go ahead. Rock the party. Okay. Number 7, huh?
Right, because the bottom line is, if as a group of people, if your group is always reinventing the wheel from the beginning, it's difficult as a group of people to move forward. And so whatever it is that you are able to accomplish, not only do you need to reach back and help other people come in with you, but if you got something that you can put together that will benefit people who look like you in perpetuity, which is what the thing I'm looking at now. And no, I'm not Oprah. I am not her relative, and I'm not her best friend. But I will have a little bit of money left over after I'm gone. I pay my mortgage off this year. I'm so excited.
Amen to
that. But so what I'm looking at, and I'm real clear about my agenda, that I want to do something that has impact, that impact helps benefits African Americans, and is sustainable, meaning 150 years from now, whatever I support or give whatever few dollars I have to, is still doing things, these other 2 things, to help African Americans. And I'm telling, and since it's my money and I work for it for 50 years, I can basically say I can walk away from it. It's not like I got to give it to you.
Exactly. That power.
So
That. Yeah.
and it's not huge money, but I also, proposed a way to have like maybe 90% of the money go to the particular cause and 10% go back to the fund itself, so that over time the fund grows and then it gets to a point where it might be real money. But I'm negotiating, but I'm not negotiating from a place of weakness. I'm negotiating because I learned early on about investing. My first job, I was making less than $10,000 a year, and I got this thing in my paycheck that said, after you've been here a year, this is when I was a reporter, you can buy stock in the company. So I walked over to the business desk and I said, what's the stock and why should I care? And he explained the technicalities of it. And then he said the magic sentence, which is, and if you invest well, your money will make money while you're asleep. And that was really exciting to me, because when I left college, they told me Social Security would not be in place. And so I was concerned about how I was going to take care of myself in my old age. And so from starting making less than $10,000 a year, I was buying stock in the company and taking an extra $25 out of my paycheck and setting up a little bank account so I could go buy other stock. And then I was learning, going back to number one, what the stock market is, how it works, how you make decisions about, what you want to invest in and that kind of stuff, so people couldn't run me over and just sell me stuff they wanted me to have. So that's kind of, part of the process too. That's why I put those two together, because I knew that I not only wanted to have money for me, if there was any left over, then I might be able to help some other people.
When you talk about legacy and wealth and intergenerational impact, that seems like that was top of mind for you. And it sounds like you've done amazing for yourself and for your community. Obviously, you have for us. Thank you for being, a part of our show. We just got a couple more things that we want to talk through really quick. But we want to thank you before we get there for just taking the time to include us in your dream circle and allow us to key into your frequency, because we believe in the law of attraction. We believe that once you get on a certain wavelength, that everything that agrees with that energy level and that frequency, it automatically starts to search for you. And that's why, in the Think Like a DJ book, we talk about taking the opportunity to, not chase your dream, but attract your dream and allow your dream to, find you. It's not always that you were in a position that you were today. You told us your story here today and how you started out from humble beginnings and how just that desire alone manifested itself into intergenerational impact. So before we go, we wanted to ask you one question, and we're going to ask you to do a game with us really quick. But I know Ken's got a question for you that we wanted to have you complete a particular sentence, and Ken's got that for us. So I'll let him go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, and again, thank you again for your time. We certainly have been blessed with all your wealth of knowledge and just you taking the time out to speak positively in regards to, Blacks and to the potential that we have and how we can be an ally to each other. And so with that being said, our vision is to push African Americans forward and push the mindset that we can do things together. And so you spoke on 150 years after, as far as what you plan to do with your contributions or your donations or whomever you plan to give it to. What's your vision for the next 400 years for Black people? What do you foresee or think that we can do in order to position ourselves economically, as well as start to get into the political vein of making some change within our communities and within our businesses?
Thank you for that question. One is that we've got to focus on economic self-sufficiency. In other words, not just the paycheck and the great shoes, that kind of thing. And that I have nothing wrong. I mean, I try to look decent so I don't scare too many children. But think also long term. What is it that I can do that will allow me to retire early or retire or do some things that I want to do to benefit the community and that kind of stuff. The other thing is, to your point, I talked about budgets and legislation. In between the elections, we need to pay attention to what people are designating money for, and what kinds of laws they are passing, and to be there to talk to our elected officials. They work for us, to say, yes, I like this, or no, I don't, and here's what I would recommend we do. We need to do, I mean, that's what other groups do. You may have heard of the Tea Party, that, the Taxing Up Already Party, that came out a few years ago, and that's why the other part, the party that's in charge of the Senate, is running scared, because they know that those people will come out and run somebody against them if they do not do what they want. When we need to take a page from that, and then know your history, and that is critical, because if you don't know who you are, we are the descendants of the survivors, the people who not only stayed alive, but pushed the ball, the ball across, not the finish line, but down the field, ran the ball down the field far enough for us, the three of us, to be talking like we're talking right now. Mm-hmm. And so we should not think that we got to take a backseat to anybody. But you don't know that if you don't know your history. And a lot of people say, I don't want to know about all that stuff in the back. You know what? We are here now. The first person to do blood transfusion was a Black man. The first person to do a heart surgery was a Black man. The first woman, not Black woman, woman to be a self-made millionaire was a Black woman. So when we know that we can accomplish whatever we put our minds to, people can talk all they want, and it'll just roll off your back. It's like, I understand you don't think I can do it, but watch me.
It seems like you're taking that attitude and expand your life, and so we're thankful for just that attitude, for that for you dropping those jewels on us. It's been a blessing just having that time with you. Me and Martinez are looking for a part 2, honestly. If we can get that out of you, then that'll be even more of a blessing. We know that you have so much more to share with us and with our listeners. And so I'm going to pass it over to Martinez.
Yeah, so we want to play a quick game with you. One more before we go. That's what they used to say when they played the records back in the day, huh? One more before we go. So we got one more before we go. We play this game called In the Mix. It's a rapid rotation game. So it's just like a turntable on the record continuously spinning. So you just tell us, if you in the mix, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear these words? This is just word association. You ready for it?
Okay.
All right. One more before we go. The first word is Black excellence.
Is achievable.
Financial freedom.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Is achievable.
What about leadership?
Leadership, if you bring the skills with you, but do not be concerned or afraid to step back and let somebody else step forward, and you be the supporter.
Okay, like leading from the back.
Leading from the back.
What about destiny?
You can shape your own destiny. What you decide. I do 5-year plans. What you decide about where you want to be, you have an opportunity to control. All right, and even overcome obstacles.
To even overcome obstacles. That leads me right into fulfillment. What does fulfillment sound like to you?
Fulfillment is not only not only financially, being financially secure, but it's also knowing that you can make a difference in people's lives while you're around and after you're gone.
And our last two. The first one is purpose.
Purpose is we're all put here for a reason, and whatever gift you have, whatever skill you have, you're put there to use that skill not only for yourself but to help others.
And lastly, Black wealth.
Black wealth is what will ultimately help us get out of this cycle of, we're going to hurt you now. Okay, we'll be nice this time, and now we're going to hurt you again. Because if you look up Black Wall Street, the reason they had to burn it down is because people were upset that these people were able to live their lives at a high level, and didn't need anybody else. So obviously, Black wealth is a threat, so we need to go for it.
Well, let's do it. God bless you, sister. Miss Payton, we're excited to have you here, and we can't wait to get back together. And we're interested in seeing you over the course of time and continuing to build partnership with you and friendship with you. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being our inaugural guest and being the first person that we're charting some interesting waters. This is uncharted territory for a lot of young creatives, and we thank you for being along the fantastic voyage with us.
Yeah, again.
And thank you for having me. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. We thank you again. I found that Black Pages and it sparked something within me. It sparked a level of servitude and a bit of responsibility that I felt to pass the message along, and that's how I started. And I want to be continued to add to that, to your legacy, and to add to the Black Pages is just in the means of creating it on the podcast and just passing your word along to others. And so, again, thank you for your time.
Oh, and congratulations to you both. You are way down the road.
Thank you so much for setting it up for us and getting us on the right path and paving the road for us to be down.
God bless you both. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
All right, you too. Take care.
I had so much fun in this interview. It really felt like Miss Payton just blessed us with so much game on how to basically have Black resilience and build our capacity to push the social envelope, being the fearless Black woman in the workplace. I love when she said we cannot waste our time waiting on people to come and rescue us. They ain't coming to get you off your couch, baby boy. And when she went into the rabbit hole and she started to discuss the power of inclusive legislation and inclusive budgets. Listen to Miss Sheila Payton's protest song, Bad Movie, for music inspiration during this unprecedented time of Black resistance. On the next episode of Think Like a DJ, the Mixtape Podcast,
we catch up with NFL professional football player, philanthropist, and father, former Green Bay Packer Lance Kendricks,
as he discusses the power of focus, family, and finance, and his Black Lives Matter protest at Lambeau Field.
Your life is the party,
and you're the DJ.
Think like a DJ.